Hi, my name is Jessica, and I'm a legal intern with the Avalon Center. The Avalon Center has a legal advocate who can give you more information and assistance with getting a protective order. The purpose of this video is to provide general information, not legal advice, and the options discussed are just possibilities and are not guaranteed in every situation. I'm going to explain what a permanent protective order is and what the process of getting a permanent protective order can look like. There is no guarantee that a victim will get a permanent protective order. This is also not necessarily what the process will look like for everyone. It is just a possibility. A permanent protective order can order the abuser to stop abusing a victim, order the abuser to stop contacting the victim's family, the victim's household members, and the victim's children, order the abuser to leave the victim's house and give the victim temporary possession of the house, order the abuser to not shut off the utilities, require the abuser to provide acceptable alternative housing for the victim's family, the victim's household members, and the victim's children, can give the victim temporary possession of any jointly owned cars and prevent the abuser from using the car, can grant the victim exclusive use and possession of a cell phone number and order the abuser not to turn off the cell phone, can prohibit the abuser from using a cell phone or electronic device to locate the victim, can order the abuser to participate in treatment or counseling and grant the victim temporary custody or temporary visitation for any children the victim has in common with the abuser, can grant the victim possession of a pet if the victim is the owner of the pet, and can provide any other relief necessary to protect the victim and the victim's family, including children. These are just possibilities and are not guaranteed in every situation. Permanent protective orders can also differ a lot. Some can be no contact, others can be contact with certain restrictions, some can be no violence, and everything in between. It is important for victims to talk to their lawyers about what will work best in their situation. Judges and magistrates issue permanent protective orders in two situations. The first is when there is a warrant for the arrest of the abuser because of the abuse, and the second is if after a hearing, the judge or magistrate finds that the victim has experienced an act of violence, force, or threat. The hearing is when both the victim and the abuser get to present evidence at court. Permanent protective orders cannot be issued without the abuser being present or knowing that the protective order is being issued. The permanent protective order takes effect when it is given to the abuser. Permanent protective orders are not truly permanent. They last up to 2 years but can be extended. Next, I will explain what the process of getting a permanent protective order usually looks like. Typically, a victim gets a preliminary protective order before getting a permanent protective order. So the steps for getting a permanent protective order usually build on the steps and information in the preliminary protective order video. After getting a preliminary protective order, if the victim wants to continue forward and get a permanent protective order, the first step to get the permanent protective order is the full hearing. The full hearing is when both the victim and the abuser get to present evidence to a judge. When the victim gets their preliminary protective order, the judge will tell the victim when the full hearing is, and it will be written on the preliminary protective order. At the full hearing, the victim is the person asking for the protective order. The court calls the person asking for the protective order the petitioner. The court calls the abuser the respondent. The second step in getting a permanent protective order is that the judge decides if the victim will get a permanent protective order. The third step in getting a permanent protective order is that the abuser is served. A permanent protective order is not effective until the abuser is served, and the abuser is served when a law enforcement officer or a court official gives the permanent protective order to the abuser. To help in serving the abuser, the victim should give the law enforcement information about how to find the abuser. For example, an address, a phone number, where the abuser works, or a photograph. The victim will likely be informed that the abuser has been served. But to be certain, the victim should call law enforcement and ask if the abuser has been served. There is no guarantee that a victim will get a permanent protective order. It is just a possibility. It is the abuser's responsibility not to violate the protective order. If the abuser violates the conditions, it is a crime. If the abuser is convicted of violating a protective order, the abuser must serve some time in jail, and the court must issue a new protective order. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this information about protective orders.